Hey there, it's Tom Corson-Knowles, the Authentic Health Coach, and we're back here with Dr. Candace Corson answering your questions from Facebook about nutrition and health. And right now the question is, what can I do about Candida or candidiasis or Candida infections, yeast infections?
You know, we hear a lot more about that today, and there is a real entity of overgrowth of yeast in the human intestine. Candida, some people call it Candida, candidiasis. Bottom line, it's never a beginning of an illness. It's always a result. It's always a result of something deeper than that that's disturbing immune function, and it's disturbing the level and the balance of the good germs in the human intestine. And there is actually a very complex ecosystem of perhaps as many as 500 different species of important good germs that live in a special balance in the human immune intestine in a normal human being. But this balance is disturbed in almost everyone today by the presence of antibiotics. For one thing, we have a low-level chronic exposure to antibiotics, which is very unfortunate in our food stream because of the widespread daily use of antibiotics in animal feed. This is a huge problem for a lot of different reasons, but one of them is that we already have the loss of our delicate immune balance, which is governed by the perfect balance of these good germs in our intestine. So this is already disturbed by the presence of low-level antibiotics, meats, dairy, eggs, and so forth, because of feeding antibiotics in the livestock feed. When we have a disturbance of these good germs, which is virtually almost everyone today has some exposure in that way, and particularly we have the exposure with every time we use antibiotics for human use for an infection, even if we absolutely must use these antibiotics, we always pay with a price. It's a double-edged sword, the use of antibiotics, because every time we use them, we lose our good ecosystem, our good germs in the intestine. And these are terribly important because 70% of our entire immune system by weight in human beings is actually in the lining of the intestine. 70% of our whole immune system. And our immune system is one very elegantly coordinated unit. It's not one set of immune system for our tonsils or our spleen or our adenoids or our lymph nodes in one part of the body. It's all one integrated immune system. So what happens to the intestinal immune system governs the regulation of the entire immune system. And that's why it's so important how we take care of these good little germs. How important they are, we can think of it just in terms of numbers. The human body, let's say an adult, has approximately 10 trillion cells to make up the whole body, all different kinds of cells. In a healthy, grown-up human being, we actually have 10 times that many good, healthy germs when they have not been destroyed by antibiotic usage. So it's, let's say, 100 trillion of the good little germs. It's actually several pounds of weight lining the intestine and actually forming the first immune barrier in a healthy immune system of a human being. So these little germs are not just good for us, they're critically important to our health. And when they are disturbed, we have an imbalance of the entire immune system. And we see this today in terms of Candida, yeast overgrowth. We see this in terms of autoimmune illness. We see it in terms of inadequate surveillance and killing of cancer cells, so higher risk of cancer when we don't have good immune surveillance. And of course allergies, which between allergies and asthma, which has a strong allergic component in many people, inflammatory component, we have rising incidence of asthma, inflammation, allergies, autoimmune disease, and basically disorders of the human immune system. A lot of it is due to the overuse and inappropriate use of antibiotics. And so dealing with Candida or Candida is something that has to include the healing of the entire intestinal lining, the rebalancing of the good germs, and our nutrition has everything to do with that, because again, a plant-based diet with lots of natural, normal, healthy, whole plant, fresh fibers is the exact type of food that the good germs thrive on. These good germs thrive on these plant foods in our intestine, and those foods are actually called prebiotics, P-R-E. Prebiotics are the good, healthy plant foods with their healthy fibers that the good germs necessarily have to grow on. So we often hear of using probiotics. Those are the good germs themselves to replace the ones that have been lost by antibiotic therapy. So the totality of our nutrition actually has a lot to do with whether or not we can have immune competence that fights off all kinds of abnormal fungi, including the actually normal presence of Candida or Candida. It's just a question of the balance and harmony. In the normal immune system, there are tiny amounts of Candida that's not harmful, but when the overgrowth occurs because of the loss of immune competence and the loss of the good germs, then we have, I say, the Candida or the yeast are having a party, and that is one very good reason why people should never use antibiotics inappropriately and unnecessarily. Whenever they do need them, and they need to be used, when antibiotics have to be used, people should really consider always replacing the good germs, starting with the antibiotic, or in between antibiotic dosages. It won't interfere with the antibiotic at all, but perhaps for several weeks to even months after a large exposure to antibiotics, people need good probiotics. It's never the exact same balance as we had before, but at least we can approximate and help the body get back into balance. And one last thing is the presence of processed refined carbohydrates, that's sugars in the diet, white flour, white sugar, and so forth, is extremely damaging to the balance of flora, the good germs, and the presence of yeast or Candida is greatly enhanced by eating these sugars. So bottom line, people do not want to be eating refined sugars, refined carbohydrates. On the other hand, whole fruits, almost all whole fruits, because of the presence of fiber. Again, these are good plant fibers that the good germs thrive on, and not a sugary environment if you're eating things like apples and chewing them up thoroughly and eating them with lots of greens. People should not generally need to restrict whole plant foods, but they do need to restrict processed high sugar foods greatly. And that's good for everybody. Those foods are inflammatory anyway. So I hope that helps. It's all about the totality and balance of what's happening in the intestine and the immune system. And there are things that can underlie people who are doing everything right and they're still having big problems with yeast overgrowth. A deeper problem needs to be looked for, such as heavy metal toxicity, mercury toxicity, these kinds of things, because that's harmful to everything happening at the intestinal level. So people need to, I think, access health care from either a medical doctor or either a DO, MD, ND, naturopath who has training in functional medicine to really help them to regain their health. The patient really is the one who's doing the work, but they need a good guide as to what that work needs to be. And I think the centerpiece is nutrition and stress, those two things, and helping the body to deal with the toxicity it already has and limit any avoidable added toxicity. Because all of our ailments today, all of our chronic illnesses are a combination of too many toxins, too few detoxifying and protective nutrients, and that imbalance is the perfect storm that's led to so much chronic illness today at very young ages. So I hope that gives some hope and a pathway where people can start getting healthier.
Alright, thanks for watching this video about Candida yeast infections and how to improve your health overall. And if you've got more questions, go ahead and write it and comment below on our YouTube video, or check us out on Facebook on our fan page and ask us the question there, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And remember, click the subscribe button below the YouTube video here and subscribe to our YouTube channel for latest nutrition tips, updates, and videos. Have an incredible day. Take care.